Good morning, and thank you very much. Dear Dean Petrie, faculty, family and friends, and most important, class of 2017 Brandeis IBS graduates. It's my great pleasure and honor to stand here today and share this very special and happy moment with you so early in the morning. I feel extremely grateful to Dean Petrie, who has served Brandeis IBS for the past 30 years. He was the dean who started the Lambert program in International Economics and Finance, where I was one of the second class. And today, he's your dean at IBS, leading the program from strong to stronger. Looking at all of you, how young you are. And I was this young as well, only more than 2.5 decades ago. The journey that took me to Brandeis and my journey afterwards will certainly be very different from what your journeys will be. Nevertheless, I think history sometimes has its relevance in an extremely interesting way. The first thing I want to share with you is never underestimate the importance of education. Education does not stop when you graduate, but it carries on for the rest of your life. I was born in the late 1960s back in China, when China was still suffering from the Cultural Revolution. My grandmother was the first one who taught me how to read and how to count. She always told me how important it was for a girl to become well-educated so she could stand on her own feet. While I was older, I learned she spoke from her own painful experiences. My grandfather died young when my mother was still in her infancy. My grandmother went on to work supporting my mother and her 2 sisters. Later on, all 3 of them went on to top universities in China. Quite an achievement in those days. In the early 1980s, the Chinese government started a charity called School for Hope, which sponsored poor rural Chinese children to go to school. My grandmother, already in her 70s, became an ardent donor and always highlighting her support for girls if possible. Looking back, I grew up in an age which certainly significantly lacking in physical abundance was more than compensated for by full of hope. We didn't have any of the current possessions that you take for granted. Back then, apple was still just a fruit. The internet was unheard of, and 99.9% of the Chinese families didn't even have a phone at home. But we read books, all kinds of books in paperbacks. We were absorbing as much new information as possible, like dry sponge absorbing water. We were so eager to see the rest of the world, but it was certainly not easy, as most of the Chinese families were still fighting for basic living standards improvement. I would never have been able to make the trip to the US if not as a recipient of the Wynn International Scholarship. 60 years ago, Lawrence and May Wynn dared to envision an international exchange program that would foster mutual understanding among people from different backgrounds, different culture, in an atmosphere of cooperative learning. I was lucky enough to become a member of the Wynn Scholarship family and made the trip from Beijing towards them. Coming to the US, everything was new, exciting, but the culture shock was huge. My life at Brandeis opened up a new world of all possibilities to me. So the second thing I would like to share with you is, do not stop giving back and paying it forward. The third thing I would like to share with you is, do not hesitate about making unconventional choices. At Brandeis, I made my career choice. During the junior year, I decided to switch my major from computer science to economics and finance. I thought too many Chinese were doing science and technology, and my strength was really applying my math skills to a more people-focused business. I wanted to work on Wall Street. This was a completely strange field, as China didn't even have a stock market yet. But I knew that China would not stay that backward forever, and I would like to be a pioneer if this field were to open up someday in the near future. In July 1993, China listed its first stock overseas, and I packed myself back off to China at the beginning of 1994. There was a time when many of my old friends from China had just come to the US, looking forward to building their American dreams. I bucked the trend and went back. Global investors got their first taste in a new and potentially huge market. Nevertheless, 3 years into that job, China was hit by the Asia financial crisis in 1997. Tens of thousands of companies went bankruptcy, and tens of millions of people lost their jobs. The stock market crashed, and 6 out of the first 11 stocks I covered disappeared. Global investors' enthusiasm soured and took a decade to recoup. I felt my young career was coming to an end, and many people left Hong Kong, left China. But I decided to stay on, as I liked what I did and repeated to myself, this must have just been a small setback. In 1998-99, US investment banks started to expand aggressively into Asia, and I was hired by Merrill Lynch to head up their China research. At the age of 31, I became the first female head of research for any major US investment bank in Asia, and I was promoted to managing director at the age of 33, one of the youngest female MD in Merrill's history. And sometimes I think the reason I got them is all because I stayed on. Then it came the dotcom boom and the subsequent bust in 2002. Once again, the financial industry went through a major shakeup. Again, many people lost their jobs, many people left. Subsequently, thanks to the Fed's aggressive monetary easing cycle, which came at the perfect timing of China's entry into WTO, China's cheap labor married America's cheap credit. Together, they led the global recovery. Then it came the super bull market between 2004 and 2007. The happy time returned and looked like to stay. In September 2007, at the peak of the bull market, shortly after my son was born, something didn't feel quite right. Time had aged me, but hopefully had also made me calmer and wiser. Amid a euphoria sentiment, after downgrading the China market in the 5th week of my maternity leave, I went on to a 3-week of global marketing trip, sending warning signals to global investors. Then we all know what happened after. The US housing crisis brought the entire world to a halt for a moment, and many familiar names in the financial industry disappeared. Many longtime friends left the industry for good. At some point, I started to wonder that after 15 years, whether I should make a change, in particular with my son growing up fast and starting to demand more time from me. As I was going through this mental debate, I talked to my mentors. Both of them gave me great advices. Don't rush into any decision, in particular when there are so many uncertainties. Don't let what other people do impact you. Take a step back and make your own feelings a priority. My husband, who also works in the highly demanding investment banking field, showed great support and told me he would be supportive whatever decision I made. I knew by heart, despite all the volatilities which often give me mental and physical strength, despite all the long working hours and long traveling that often take me away from family obligations, I still love my job as it brings me to meet interesting people. It leads me to the latest cutting-edge technology, and it keeps me in tune with the newest global trends. I made some changes. Instead of leaving the industry, I switched to the other side of the industry. I started a China-focused hedge fund with 2 partners in year 2010. We started with $93 million, now we manage well over $1 billion, making us one of the largest homegrown China-focused hedge funds globally. So the last thing I want to highlight is listen to your heart and do what you feel you love to do. Now I'm on this new path for more than 7 years. It was, is, and will continue to be a bumpy one. China has become the 2nd biggest economy in the world, but also at the peak of a debate about its growth sustainability, clouded by many cyclical and structural challenges. Even with close to 25 years of experience under my belt, I'm still humbled by the market every single day. Nevertheless, I'm still looking forward to going to work, going to office every single morning. Looking back, the past 3 decades, I sometimes think being at the right place at the right time is extremely important. Winning the Wynn International Scholarship to come to Brandeis, I was at the right place to receive my higher education. Returning to China when it was just opening up its financial system, I was at the right time to build my career. And surviving 3 bear markets to witness the Chinese economy growing 10 times in 25 years to become a global powerhouse, I was certainly at the right place at the right time. Also, I'm lucky to have a loving and supportive family. Many of your generation often ask me how to balance work and life. Honestly speaking, there is no such thing as a balanced life. It's all about choices. The best advice I can give you is do what makes you happy and then try your best to make people around you happy. This is as balanced as I can think of and hope for. The world is changing very fast. You have new leaders, new governments, new policies, new technologies, and above all, new challenges. 30 years ago, my generation had to embrace a formidable wave of globalization while trying to maintain our own identities. 30 years later, that is now, you have to cope with the rising trend of localization while trying to prevent the spread of hostilities. But one thing doesn't change, and I believe that's the only thing which keeps all of us going. It's the willingness to learn, to adapt to whatever the world brings to us. For all of you, now is the time you should start to figure out what's the right place and the right time for you. No one can tell you what they are, because as individuals, we are all different and we are all special. Listen to your heart carefully. There is the old Chinese saying, 路漫漫其修远兮，吾将上下而求索. It means life is a journey, and you shall continue to explore. And I hope you also enjoy the view along this journey. I'm here today. I can feel my grandmothers, my parents are here with me. I can feel the spirits of Mr. and Mrs. Wynn are here with us. The founding ideals of theirs that brought me to Brandeis resonate more than ever. I'm here today to pay my gratitude to Brandeis, which opened up a new life to me. Good luck to all of you. The world is yours. Thank you.